Hi, I'm Natalie James. I'm 34, single by choice, and the first in my family to graduate with a master's in finance. But in my family, success doesn't earn you respect. Not when you're a woman, and definitely not when you don't do things the traditional way. Thanksgiving at my parents' house has always been a performance, especially when my Uncle Ron is there. He's my mom's older brother, a former sales guy who always talks about the good old days when people worked with their hands, not their heads. He's loud, condescending, and never misses a chance to belittle anyone trying to rise above. This year, the turkey wasn't even fully carved when Ron turned to me and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "So, how's that fancy degree treating you, Natalie? Still working for someone else? Guess all that studying didn't teach you how to get rich." I swallowed my bite and said calmly, "Actually, I started my own firm last quarter. We're profitable already." He laughed. "Well, anyone can start a business. Keeping it alive is another story. Besides, those kinds of degrees, they don't teach you real-world grit. They teach you to be entitled." His words weren't just rude, they were intentional. My dad looked away. My mom pressed her fork too hard into the mashed potatoes. No one said anything. No one ever says anything when Ron starts talking. But this time, I said something. Not with my mouth, with my mind. I sat there, smiling politely, and made a quiet decision. He would learn exactly how much my degree was worth, and I wouldn't have to say a single word to prove it. I stayed calm the rest of the night, helping with dishes, hugging cousins, sipping wine. But inside me, a fire had lit. I had built something real, and if life was as ironic as I thought it was, well, I wouldn't have to wait long for karma to find Ron. 2 weeks later, I walked into my office on a quiet Tuesday morning. I'd just gotten back from a networking trip in Seattle. 5 new clients, 1 signed merger deal, and a stack of resumes waiting on my desk. I ran my own financial consulting firm, small but mighty. We had just opened a second branch, and I was looking to hire a senior financial advisor. A solid salary, flexible hours, and, ironically, one requirement: a master's degree. I took a sip of coffee, opened the folder, and skimmed through the first few resumes. One was underqualified, another had the right credentials but no relevant experience. And then I saw it. Ronald James, my uncle. I blinked, then looked again. It couldn't be real, but it was. Same name, same home address, same smug face staring up from a black and white headshot. Under qualifications: 20-plus years in traditional sales and client management, strong communicator, eager to return to the financial sector, open to mentorship from younger professionals. Mentorship from younger professionals? The man who mocked my degree was asking for mentorship? At first, I felt a rush of smug satisfaction, but it didn't last. It was quickly replaced by something heavier: disappointment. Not in him, but in how predictable this was. Ron had lost his job a few months back when the company he worked for downsized. I heard bits and pieces from Mom, how he was figuring it out, how things were tight. But I hadn't realized he was desperate enough to come here. To me, it was surreal. After all those years of him calling me the bookworm, or the fragile one, or Little Miss MBA, he was now asking for a job. From me. I sat back in my chair and stared at the ceiling, and then I remembered something. That Thanksgiving conversation, the exact words he used. Degrees don't mean anything in the real world, and yet, here he was, applying to a position that required one. I could have tossed the resume aside and had HR send a polite rejection, but something inside me said no, not yet. This was bigger than payback. This was about making a point, not just to him, but to everyone who's ever laughed when a woman dared to aim higher. So I moved the resume into the interview pile, and I sent a message to my HR manager. Schedule Ronald James for next Thursday. Let him know it'll be a panel interview, with me present. She replied a moment later. "Will do." He seemed eager. "Didn't realize he was your relative." I smiled. Oh, he's very eager, but he has no idea who's waiting behind that door. Thursday came quickly. The morning air was brisk, and the sky was overcast. Fitting, I thought, for what was about to unfold. I arrived early at the office, dressed sharply in a navy pantsuit and low heels, with my hair neatly pinned. I didn't do it to impress Ron. I did it because I had earned this seat, every inch of it. My assistant, Dana, knocked on my glass door mid-morning and peeked her head in. "Your 11 a.m. interview is here. He's in the waiting room." I stood. "Thank you. Let him in." I could hear the footsteps before I saw him. Then the door opened, and in walked Uncle Ron. He didn't recognize me right away. Maybe it was the formal setting. Maybe it was the tailored suit. Maybe it was the fact that I wasn't clearing dishes or getting ignored across a dinner table. But when his eyes finally locked with mine, he froze. "Natalie?" I didn't flinch. "Good morning, Mr. James. Please, have a seat." He glanced around the conference room, clearly thrown off. There were 2 other senior team members seated beside me, Marcus and Priya. They both smiled politely, unaware of the backstory. Ron sat down slowly, still not saying much. His face looked a little flushed. The confident bravado I was used to seeing, gone. In its place, uncertainty. "Let's begin," I said, clicking my pen. Marcus led with a basic question. "Tell us about your experience with client portfolio management." Ron stumbled at first. He talked about cold calls, sales quotas, and meeting targets. He tried to spin outdated job titles into modern relevance. He used jargon he clearly didn't understand. And then it happened. He looked directly at me and said, "I'm a fast learner, and I'm not afraid to take advice, even from younger leadership, especially women who've made it this far. I mean that." I stared at him, expression neutral. He added, "I've always believed in respecting people who climb their way up." That was a lie, a complete rewrite of history. I leaned forward slightly. "And how do you define success, Mr. James?" He hesitated. Initiative, drive, experience. Does education factor in?" "Of course," he said without thinking. "It's the foundation." I let that sit for a moment. Then I asked calmly, "Do you remember what you said to me at Thanksgiving?" His mouth parted, but nothing came out. The room was quiet. Priya and Marcus looked between us, sensing tension they hadn't expected. Ron cleared his throat. I may have said something careless." "Number you said my degree meant nothing." He stared down at his resume. I leaned back in my chair. "Funny, isn't it, that the job you want now requires the very thing you mocked me for?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult him. I just let the truth hang in the air. The interview wrapped up politely. Marcus thanked him. Priya nodded once. I closed my folder and said, "We'll be in touch." He didn't look me in the eye as he left, but I could feel the weight of what he'd just realized. I wasn't the same niece he once underestimated. That afternoon, the office felt unusually quiet. Even with the phones ringing and keyboards tapping, there was a hush that settled around me. Not from the team, they were oblivious. But inside me, something had shifted. I closed the door to my office and sat with my thoughts for a long time. My hands hovered over my keyboard, but I wasn't answering emails. I was replaying that moment. The way Ron couldn't even meet my eyes. The way his confidence had melted into shame. It should have felt like victory, but it didn't, not fully. Because Ron wasn't just a man who mocked me. He was family. He was the uncle who used to push me on the swing when I was little. The one who brought me licorice from gas stations during long car rides. And yes, he was also the man who laughed at my ambition, rolled his eyes at my scholarship, and told my parents I was too soft for business. Both things were true, and that's what made this so hard. I got up and looked out my window. The city stretched before me, confident and alive. Somewhere out there, my uncle was probably sitting in his truck, rethinking everything he thought he knew. A part of me wondered if I should call him, say something, extend the olive branch he'd never offer me. But another part of me, stronger now, said, Let him feel it. Let him sit in the silence you once had to swallow. Back then, I used to cry in my room after family dinners. I'd lie awake and wonder why my wins never counted, why my GPA, my internships, my first job at 22, it all felt invisible around the people who were supposed to clap the loudest. They never clapped. Not for me. But now, I was the one doing the hiring, and he was the one asking for a chance. Later that evening, as the team trickled out for the day, Priya poked her head into my office. "Hey, that interview earlier, everything okay?" I smiled faintly. "Yeah, just complicated history." She nodded. "We've all got one of those. For what it's worth, you handled that with more class than I would have." When she left, I stared at my inbox. There was an unread email from HR titled, "Interview Feedback." Ronald James. I clicked it. Marcus had written, "Candidate seems outdated in skill set, minimal adaptability, doesn't meet firm's strategic direction, recommend, do not proceed. Short, professional, clear." I didn't reply right away. Instead, I scrolled through the contact list and found something I hadn't seen in years, an old family photo from Thanksgiving in 2015. There I was, holding a plate, smiling tightly. Ron stood in the back, drink in hand, mid-laugh, probably at one of his own jokes. I looked at that photo, and for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt tall, because I had climbed, quietly, steadily, without applause, and now I stood on ground I built myself, and he was knocking at the door. The next morning, I called HR and asked them to hold off on sending the rejection email. "Just give me a few hours," I told them. "I'll handle it." I didn't know why I wanted to deliver it myself. Maybe it was closure. Maybe it was dignity. Or maybe, deep down, I just wanted to give him the one thing he never gave me: honesty. I found his number in my contacts, buried under years of neglect. I stared at it for a minute, thumb hovering over the green button. Then I took a breath and pressed call. He answered on the third ring. "Hello?" "Hi, Uncle Ron, it's Natalie." A long pause. "Oh, Natalie. Hey there." His voice cracked slightly, and I could hear the discomfort in his tone, like he wasn't sure whether I was calling to gloat, scold, or something worse. "I wanted to follow up about the interview," I said calmly. "Personally." "Oh, yeah, sure. Listen, I appreciate the chance. Really, wasn't expecting to see you there, to be honest." "No, I don't imagine you were." He cleared his throat. "Look, about Thanksgiving." I cut in gently. "You don't have to explain. I remember what you said, but this call isn't about that." I paused. "We won't be moving forward with your application." Silence. Then quietly, "Yeah, I figured." "It's not personal," I added. "Your experience doesn't align with what the firm needs right now. We're growing fast, and the position requires fluency in tools and methods that are different from what you've used." He didn't respond right away, but when he finally did, his voice was lower, almost humbled. "I understand, honestly. I knew it wasn't a great fit. Just figured I'd try." "That's fair," I said. Then came the part I didn't expect. He exhaled deeply and said, "You've built something impressive, Natalie. I mean that. I was wrong about you, and about a lot of things." It didn't feel triumphant to hear him say it. It didn't fix years of put-downs or ignored milestones, but it did feel real. I stayed quiet. He continued, "I guess it took seeing you in that chair, hearing you lead that room, to realize how far behind I really am and how much you've earned." I almost didn't know how to respond, so I told him the truth. "I didn't build this to prove you wrong, Ron. I built it because I stopped waiting for people like you to clap." There was another long silence. Then, with a strange mix of awkwardness and sincerity, he said, "Well, maybe I'm clapping now, just a little late." I hung up not out of anger, but peace. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I needed his validation. I didn't feel like the invisible niece at the holiday table. I was Natalie James, founder, CEO, and builder of my own damn applause. A year passed, 12 full months since that Thanksgiving, since that phone call, since that awkward interview where my uncle finally saw me not as the bookworm niece, but as something else entirely. A woman who had arrived. This year, I debated skipping Thanksgiving altogether. Between business expansion, travel, and a client onboarding project that had kept me up for 3 nights straight, I had a perfect excuse. But something told me I needed to go. Not for Ron. For me. My parents' house looked the same as it always had. String lights twinkling along the porch, the smell of cinnamon and roasted garlic wafting through the air, my mother already fussing over the sweet potato casserole. Family members trickled in slowly, greeting one another with familiar smiles and practiced warmth. And then he walked in. Ron, different this time. No grand entrance, no booming voice announcing his arrival. He had trimmed his beard, worn a plain sweater, and brought a modest bottle of wine. He moved with humility. When his eyes met mine across the kitchen, I expected a nod and retreat. But instead, he walked up to me. "Natalie?" "Hi, Uncle Ron." He held out the wine awkwardly. I brought this. Thought you might like it. You always did prefer red over white." I blinked. That detail, that tiny bit of attentiveness, meant more than I could admit. "Thanks. That's thoughtful." We stood there for a second too long, neither of us quite knowing what to say next. Then he cleared his throat. "Listen, I know it's late, and I've said it already, but I want to say it again. I was wrong. About you, about everything. I didn't need the apology anymore. But hearing it, again, and in front of the mashed potatoes, somehow made the past settle a little easier." "It's all right," I said. "You're not the only one who underestimated me." He looked relieved, almost like I'd handed him a second helping of grace he didn't deserve. Later, during dinner, he didn't talk over me. Didn't challenge me. In fact, when someone asked how business was going, he chimed in with something I never thought I'd hear. "You should see her office, glass walls, 20 employees, her name on the door." The table fell silent. Even my mom looked stunned. I just smiled, cut my turkey, and replied, "It's actually 32 employees now." Laughter followed, but it wasn't mocking. It was warm, earned, the kind that fills a room without making you feel small. And for once, just once, I wasn't shrinking to fit a space too tight for my ambition. I was sitting in it fully. It's strange, isn't it? How the things meant to break you sometimes become the blueprint for your rise. I've thought about that Thanksgiving insult more times than I care to admit. Your degree means nothing. It echoed in my head during late-night client calls, echoed as I pored over profit margins, echoed when I doubted myself and wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was right. But he wasn't. What he meant as an insult became my fuel, what he thought would diminish me, built me. Because that degree? It wasn't just a piece of paper. It was every sleepless night I spent studying while working 2 jobs. It was every class I walked into where I was the only woman. It was every eye roll, every sigh, every subtle way I was told I wasn't enough, until I made it clear I was. And Ron? He became the unintentional teacher I never asked for. He taught me how to speak up when it's easier to stay quiet. He taught me that not everyone clapping for you is happy for you, and that's okay. He taught me that success isn't about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right. Today, my firm is thriving. We've expanded into 3 states. We mentor first-generation college graduates. We build teams led by women, immigrants, veterans. We believe in earned seats, not inherited ones. And Ron? He found work eventually. Somewhere smaller, closer to home. He called me last month to ask if I'd speak to his daughter's high school about career paths. Apparently, she wants to go into finance. He said, "She looks up to you. Thinks it's cool you run your own thing." I smiled, not for his approval, but because I remember being that girl, the one who just needed to see someone ahead of her, someone who looked like her, who sounded like her. So maybe, in a way, that full circle moment matters more than any revenge ever could, because the real win is sitting in the very seat they said you'd never earn, and making room for someone else. What Ron meant as a put-down became a prophecy. And when he stammered in that interview chair, it wasn't just awkward, it was justice, quiet, poised, unmistakable. And I didn't have to say a single cruel word. I just walked into the room, and everything changed.